Follow Famous and Gravy on the Wondery app or wherever you get your podcasts. You can listen to Famous and Gravy early and ad-free now by joining Wondery Plus in the Wondery app, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
It took a lifetime to find the person you want to marry. Finding the perfect engagement ring is a lot easier. At BlueNile.com, you can find or design the ring you've always dreamed of with help from Blue Nile's jewelry experts who are on hand 24/7 to answer questions, and the ease and convenience of shopping online. For a limited time, get $50 off your purchase of $500 or more with code AUDIO at BlueNile.com. That's $50 off with code AUDIO at BlueNile.com.
This is Famous and Gravy, biographies from a different point of view. Now for the opening quiz to reveal today's dead celebrity.
This person died 2022, age 93. In 1976, she became known as the $1 Million Baby because she signed a 5-year, $1 million a year contract.
$1 Million Baby. Not Gloria Swanson, was it?
Not Gloria Swanson. She was married 3 times in all, and between marriages, she dated many prominent and powerful men, among them Senator John Warner of Virginia and the Federal Reserve Chairman Alan Greenspan.
Oh, I know this. That was Taylor. She was married more than that. I don't know. More clues.
She drove a motorcycle with Sylvester Stallone, danced the mambo with Patrick Swayze, and rode a patrol boat with Fidel Castro across the Bay of Pigs.
Oh. I have no clue.
She tried to intervene in a vitriolic spat between Rosie O'Donnell and Donald J. Trump.
Barbara Walters.
Today's dead celebrity is Barbara Walters.
When I am told sometimes that I paved the way for other women journalists, I'm very proud. But it's not something that I did deliberately. I've always been able to assert myself, but afraid to assert myself. Part of me that's happiest, I guess, behind the camera, behind the lights. It's the way I have lived my career. You learn from everything you do. And as my career is coming to an end, I look back and think, look who I met. Look what I saw.
Welcome to Famous and Gravy. I'm Michael Osborne.
And I'm Amit Kapoor.
And on this show, we choose a famous figure who died in the 21st century and present a new narrative. Most biographies focus on legacies and accomplishments, but we are interested in the journey, the process, the experiences. What didn't we know? What could we not see clearly? And what does a celebrity's life story teach us about ourselves? Today, Barbara Walters, died 2022, age 93. Category 1, grading the first line of their obituary. Barbara Walters, who broke barriers for women as the first female co-host of The Today Show and the first female anchor of a network evening news program, and who as an interviewer of celebrities became one herself, helping to blur the line between news and entertainment, died on Friday at her home in Manhattan. She was 93. This is not one sentence.
That is not one sentence. Let's just talk about the ands. Co-host of the Today Show and first female anchor and who has an interviewer of celebrities.
Game one herself, and then comma helping to blur the line between news and entertainment. So there's like
entertainment.
This is not a single sentence. Where do you want to start?
Well, I think an easy place to start is they started with the word broke barriers.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that that's like our first verb.
So there's a lot of firsts in here. First female co-host and first female anchor of a network evening news. She was the first woman on TV news in so many ways, right? For me, there's one massive oversight.
The View?
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm not a big View fan. This falls into the category of TV that I mostly didn't watch, or it was on the background. I wasn't paying attention.
It's still on, Michael.
It's not targeted at me, though. It never was, right?
If you would like to get a balanced view, yes.
But there's this whole final chapter of her career that is The View, which is an unbelievable property, right?
27 years running.
But it also has this like storied history. I kind of can't believe they didn't mention that. And instead, they have this line, helping to blur the line between news and entertainment. That's a dig.
Yes.
What I don't like about the criticism, and we're absolutely going to talk about this later, is how good she was as an interviewer, right? And so, to me, I kind of don't like that it's in the first line of the obituary because it feels a little outdated in my mind to draw these stark lines between news and entertainment. I think one thing we have learned over the last 5, 10, 15 years is that maybe this is all entertainment. You know, if it's on TV, it's entertainment. And I understand that we try and have an approach to this is the news and it needs to be said in a certain way. But I'm sorry, I've really come to, I don't want to get into media theory here, but did I tell you about reading that book, Amusing Ourselves to Death?
Oh, yes.
That book is great. And it's basically a criticism of television. And I think most of it applies to the internet and social media and so forth. Sorry, I'm going on at length about this, so I need to cut myself off. But my point is that I don't like it as a dig, and it does feel like they chose to include that instead of mentioning The View.
Could be. But I think you talked yourself out of your own argument.
Yeah, you might be right.
So you said that, in the last 5-10 years, it's just a known fact that there is a blur between news and entertainment.
I wouldn't go so far as to say known fact, but I do think the lines have only gotten blurrier.
Correct.
And maybe this was always true. That's my point.
Yes, maybe it is, but somebody has to show it and highlight it, which is what she did.
Yeah.
And especially if you're reading the newspaper at the end of 2022 when Barbara Walters dies, so much of what could be on your mind of consuming any news is how did we get here?
You're right.
How did we get into this very blurry line between news and entertainment? And here they're just pointing out this was one of the starting points. And so I don't think it's unnecessary. I am not sure if
it has some sexist roots, though. And I think that has to be pointed out.
Whoa.
I think it does.
Okay, well, let's get there in a second.
Okay.
I want to address your thing is, did this take the place of mentioning her third potential big accolade, The View?
And the thing we most remember her for, modern audiences. Probably.
Questionably.
Millennials absolutely know her. If they know her at all.
If they even know that she created The View. She hasn't been on it, and she wasn't even on it for like 8 years prior to her death.
Okay, point taken. Go on.
Okay, so they made a double point, right? So they said, who as an interviewer of celebrities became one herself, which helped to blur the lines between news and entertainment. It's a double line making the same point. They could have inserted The View and made one of those points, but I will say in your defense that I don't think it's a necessary first line of obituary thing, that she became this self-fulfilling prophecy of becoming a celebrity herself and blurring the lines. I just don't think that's the biggest part of the story.
Yeah.
And so I don't know that it belongs, but I don't think it's inaccurate.
I think I totally agree. I mean, okay, can I talk about the sexist roots briefly?
I think we have to.
I think that was the criticism of her from a largely male establishment that does date back to her early interviewing Fidel Castro in 1977 and then interviewing, everybody throughout the 1980s.
It's the way it was thought of then. The so-called hard news. A woman couldn't do it. The audience wouldn't accept her voice. She couldn't go into the war zones. She couldn't ask the tough questions. The fact that I did ask the tough questions was something that was very controversial.
She represented a different kind of approach to premiere interviews, to exclusive interviews, to marquee interviews in a way that rubbed people wrong. And I do think that because she was the first woman to do that, some of that is rooted in a sexist mentality.
Yeah. And, when I first read it, I didn't read all of this as a dig so much as you did. I mean, I see your point in that by a woman entering a man's world, she's blurring these lines and they're making a sexist point in that. But I'm just reading it as an empowering point, is that, thank God somebody came along and
pointed
made
out that news is entertainment.
Correct, and that stodginess is done, which is it's over. World War II, it was 30 years before she became a nighttime anchor.
That's actually an interesting point. I mean, I read it as a criticism, and I'm coming out of the gate defending Barbara Walters, much to my own surprise.
We'll be defending her for weeks to come. I think.
I guess you said the right thing here. This is an interesting idea that should have been drawn out out over multiple paragraphs further down in the obit. It's not first line stuff to me.
Perhaps through this entire episode.
Well, themes of it, I'm sure will reappear.
Before we score, I do need to point out something. She died at home in Manhattan.
Yeah.
This is very Nora Ephron. If you remember her obituary, because Barbara Walters, like, this was one thing I learned that I kind of loved, but not quite 5 things love, is she never had a driver's license or a car.
I know.
She is so New York.
I know.
And so I like that they included that she died at her home in Manhattan.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, I have my score.
You go ahead.
I got to go 6 here. I almost went 7. I do think that there's a lot of accuracy here. Basically, I'm docking 2 points for The View, and I'm docking another 2 points for introducing this dig without really drawing it out. I almost went 7 because you almost talked me up to the, like, maybe that is actually praise.
I should sell you a car like every few weeks or something.
Well, you sold me a podcast.
I think that went the other way around if we're going to go back a few years.
That's a good point. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, it's like 6.4, but I'm going 6.
I'm a pretty solid 8. The View maybe be not as an omission. It would have been nice. What I particularly don't like is just this double point. Became a celebrity herself and blurred the lines. We've discussed. Not even sure if that was necessary. Certainly not needed to basically repeat it twice. Yeah. And so I dock it for that. But I do love the long run on sentence and the fact that this is not a sentence at all, but they made it one. Yeah. I'm kind of baking that into a higher score. Yeah. So it's an 8.
6 and an 8. That feels about right, actually. Okay. Category 2, 5 things I love about you. Here, Amit and I develop a list of 5 things that offer a different angle on who this person was and how they lived. Where do you want to go?
You can go ahead.
Okay. I'm going to, just because we started talking about it a little bit, I wrote down interview prep. Barbara Walters prepared like crazy for interviews.
At one point, you had terrible anxiety attacks.
Oh, you did do your homework.
Oh, I did do my homework.
You did.
I don't know when I talked about that. How did you find that out?
How did you find out about that?
2002, you told me you wanted to wait to have sex until after you married.
I said that?
I really like the Barbara Walters over-prepare approach. One, I think this does actually speak to some of the stuff we were talking about in the obituary, that if you want to criticize her, she reintroduces a tremendous amount of integrity by doing her homework and by obsessing about somebody in the lead up to a conversation.
People have said that she knew more about them than they did about themselves.
And the things that they'd forgotten about themselves. And there was this sort of sleight of hand, put people at ease, you know. People cried in a lot of her interviews. They were forthcoming. They didn't see it coming, even if they knew they should have seen it coming. It was an unbelievable gift. And it all started with, I am preparing for a conversation. As somebody who works in podcasting, I really admire that. But more than that, I like that it's honoring somebody. And it's not just like, you have earned yourself a Barbara Walters interview. It's more like, I want to do justice to this person. It's genuine. And I think it's also what brought out the best version of her. There's a real lesson to that for me, and whether it's interviews on TVs or podcasts or whatever it is, that turning the spotlight on somebody else is just always a healthy thing to do. Yeah. You know? So it's interview prep as a bigger idea in a way of taking the spotlight off of yourself, which I think we all struggle to do.
Yep.
So that's my number 1.
Okay. Number 2, I'm going to say she took a limitation and blew it out of the water. So a lot of the obituary referred to all of the barrier breaking that she did, but it was a rough road for Barbara as she became first nightly news anchor. And even before that, as she became the first co-host of the Today Show. Right. People got in her way a lot, and specifically these entrenched male anchors. So they would impose all these little rules, like she cannot speak first, or she cannot take the first interview or 2 within a newscast. Yeah. So in that latter restriction, this restriction that they made up for her, the exception was, though, if you don't do an interview in studio, it doesn't have to follow that sequence, right? And so she started doing these more on-set interviews in people's homes, out, for example, like out on a ranch, wherever they may be. She would meet them where they were. And the result of that is that became both legendary, and secondly, like her signature interview, and more or less like the signature interview for a very personal tell-all for the better part of 30 plus years. Yeah. And it was all started with this, no, you can't go first thing. Yeah. And so I love that she took what was a restriction meant to kind of punish her and turned it around and made it better than the original thing from which she was excluded.
Creativity comes from constraint, right? It's such a lesson in that idea. And I think like the breakthrough moment was interviewing Fidel.
Yeah, 1977. That was like, I mean, what an odd breakthrough interview to have, to interview Fidel Castro in 1977.
In Cuba.
In Cuba, but she would ride around in his Jeep and he would hold like his gun.
Fidel Castro came to our hotel early this morning to take us on a tour of the island in his Jeep. He likes to drive himself, so he did. The first stop, the Young Pioneers Camp, 20 minutes outside of Havana.
He came to meet her at her hotel for breakfast, and people were like, why the hell is Fidel Castro like here in this hotel?
Totally.
They crossed the Bay of Pigs together in a boat, but she did all of these things. She went on Ronald Reagan's ranch. There's tons and tons of these things that are all kind of hallmark TV moments.
Yeah. So how did you summarize that one?
I said she took a limitation and blew it out of the water.
Took a limitation and blew it out of the water. Well said. Number 3?
Yep.
Okay. Kind of corny, provider.
Provider.
Yeah.
Okay.
Part of the reason she is the first woman in so many ways on TV news is that we'll get more into the family life in a minute, but there came a moment in her young adult life where it became very, very clear to her, I've got to provide for my family, for my mother, my father, and my sister.
Are you talking about the father's suicide attempt?
Yes. Yeah. Like she had that idea early on. It's born of insecurity. And I think it never went away. I think it got instilled in her psychology, like, I need to work so that I can provide. But what's sort of funny is that it is at a time where it's not clear that she could have done it. Like,
28 at this like pivotal turning point.
And coming off her first divorce. I mean, and she's like, I have got to figure this out. I am going to kick myself into action and figure out a way to provide for my family. It's a small idea, I guess, but I admire when somebody steps up like that. And I do think that that set her on a course that determined the rest of her life.
Yeah, and I think we need to share the story a little bit. Basically, her father, who was very up and down financially, but he was an entertainment guy. He owned nightclubs.
Big nightclubs, including the Latin Quarter where Rodney Dangerfield played.
Yes,
past episodes.
But definitely a very up and down type of guy, both in terms of what he accumulated and I think how he acted.
Yeah, he would have great riches and then he'd gamble it away. I mean, he was a major risk taker and irresponsible.
Yes, and Barbara's mother she describes her as a perpetually unhappy woman.
Right.
So when the father attempted suicide when Barbara was 28...
Well, and I think we need to mention the sister who has special needs.
Yeah, and I'll wrap that in a second. So the father attempts suicide when Barbara is 28. The mother can't even handle it or doesn't even feel like it's...
She didn't call the hospital. She called Barbara.
She called Barbara, and Barbara was the one that had to take the father to the hospital. He did survive.
And he was enough of a figure that she had to manage the news coverage of this moment.
Yes.
Right, and keep it out of the news what had happened.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy that used to hang out with Frank Sinatra because he used to come to the club all the time.
Right, Milton Berle.
Yes, but she said there was at that moment that she realized that, like, this family is... I'm going to have to be at the helm of it.
Yeah.
And then the other part of that was her sister, who she was very close to, was special needs and would not be able to provide for herself financially. And so Barbara, at that moment, realized, I got to make a killing because I've got to look after both generations of this family, not even just myself or just my sister, but also my parents.
And I admire and I love that about her.
Okay.
So that's their 3.
So number 4, I'm actually going to build on that story a little bit, and this is the sister and daughter. So the sister we just alluded to, named Jacqueline, was special needs. Barbara loved her very much. I think that's all she can say. It was a complicated relationship, I think, when they were teens, because Barbara kind of had to look after her a little much. In some ways felt like she was robbed of her own teen years because she couldn't go on dates or something, for example, because her sister was unable to.
Right.
But she still loved her sister dearly and really did live for her sister.
The nature of the disability is a little hard to describe.
I mean, that special needs, I think, is what we would call it now,
and
but
Barbara
I'm sure it had a lot more.
We use today autistic somehow, but I'm not sure there was a diagnosis we'd
Barbara
understand
said we
today.
would use developmentally disabled right now.
Yeah, anyway.
But overall, she did love her sister very much and felt very strongly for her sister and what her sister was unable to do. So when Barbara finally had a daughter by adoption, after she'd gone through some miscarriages, she names her daughter after her sister. So she names her daughter Jacqueline, later just goes by Jackie.
Yeah.
And the reason she chose to name her after her sister is she said, I knew my sister was never going to be married and get to have a child, and I wanted her to have part of the joy that I was experiencing in being a mother.
Wow.
And so I just like that as a gesture.
Yeah.
I don't think I need to add to that.
No,
I like
that's
that
a thing to
as
love.
a gesture.
We have a fifth thing. Do you have a fifth thing that you like?
Yeah, I definitely can.
Okay, you take it.
So you said interview prep.
Yeah.
Right? I'm going to go specifically with the killer question that she had. So she was known for a few bombshell questions that she asked. And I guess there's so much to say here, I'm just going to go with two things.
Okay.
So one is my personal favorite. She had this question of what is your personal philosophy?
Yeah.
Which I just love that question because it's the type of thing that just breaks it up and you're not talking about news and the weather, and that's what Barbara Walters was all about, is let's get a little deep. So here's just some examples of how people answered, what is your personal philosophy?
Yeah.
Arnold Schwarzenegger, stay hungry. Will Smith, I don't embrace negativity. Chris Rock might have differed a few years later. Nancy Reagan, everybody has a purpose. Liam Neeson, I just like this. Take every moment as it comes and be as truthful to yourself as possible in each of those moments. They called those killer questions, but she actually was known for killer questions too, that she would ask some really hard ones.
You mean like of killers?
Of killers, potential killers.
Yeah,
So
like David Chapman, Vladimir Putin. Is that where we're going?
The Vladimir Putin story, I think, is the one I want to tell, is that she got to interview Putin. This was not long after 9/11, and it was in Russia, and she had to write down all of her questions because, you know, Russian security, but she didn't write down this question because she knew they might block it.
Yes.
So she went and asked the question last, but was not written down, and she said, Mr. Putin, have you ever ordered a kill on somebody? And he said, Niet. Yeah. But she was just notorious for these brilliant, piercing questions.
I mean, I think that when you do that kind of interview prep, you can have some real confidence to go there. I think she earns that right. Or at least that's the philosophy, which is cool.
Okay, recap.
Okay, number one, I said interview prep. Number two, you said?
Took a limitation and blew it out of the water.
Number three, I said provider. Number four, you said?
Sister-daughter.
And then you said killer question for number five. Great list. All right, let's move on. Category 3, net worth. In this category, Amit and I write down our numbers ahead of time. We will then look up the net worth number in real time, and the person closest to the actual number will explain their reasoning. Finally, we will place Barbara Walters on the Famous and Gravy net worth leaderboard. Amit Kapoor wrote down 140 million. Wow.
Okay. Michael Osborne, 125 million.
So we're kind of close.
As a percentage, this is about the closest we've been.
And Barbara Walters' net worth is 170 million.
Yes.
You're closer.
I win Price is Right and proximity rules. So our agreement is whoever is closer should give their explanation.
Yeah, but I think we're going to have similar thinking here. Go ahead.
Yeah, we knew it would be a large number,
yes.
Right? So what you referred to in the quiz, in 1976, she had $1 million salary, which was the highest of any news anchor, male or female.
Correct.
That $1 million salary in today's dollars, depending on whether you want to account for inflation or price index, that's a very significant salary, probably in the $5 to $10 million range. In the year 2000, she signed a 5-year contract, a renewal with ABC, which was $12 million a year.
Yeah.
This one was making a lot of money just on her primary job. These are excluding some of the other specials she did and excluding The View, which started in 1997.
That's the one.
Yes, and went on. I mean, the residuals from that, because they were paying the hosts of The View anywhere from $1 to $8 million.
Is
so you can just
much?
Imagine.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
She's executive producer. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I knew there would be a windfall.
Yeah.
And so I aimed a little bit low, but I knew Barbara would be rich. And so rich, the number was 160?
170.
Sorry. So she basically grabs the number 7 spot of all time on Famous and Gravy.
Okay. Tell me who's around her.
Just above her is John Madden, and just below her is Prince.
Okay. Should we move on?
Yes.
Category 4, Little Lebowski Urban Achievers.
They're the Little Lebowski Urban Achievers.
The Achievers.
Yes, and proud we are of all of them.
In this category, we choose a trophy, an award, a cameo, an impersonation, or any other form of a hat tip that we want to bring into the conversation. I'll go first.
Because I really hope you're going where we need to go.
Of course.
Okay.
The SNL parodies.
Yes.
I mean, you had to. When I asked my wife, you know who we're doing next? And she's like, who? I said, Barbara Walters. The first thing she said was,
Barbara Wawa.
Exactly.
I was told that I didn't pronounce my R's. And that's when Baba Wawa was being done on Saturday Night Live.
This is Baba Wawa at Watch.
I hated Baba Wawa.
What was Whiz Willy White, Richard?
And I go back and forth on who had the better cameo between Gilda Radner, who had it first.
Who had better impersonation?
Better impersonation. Between Gilda Radner, who did it first. That was in the mid-'70s when Barbara Walters was on her sort of celebrity ascent.
Yes.
And Sherry O'Terry. I think I prefer the Sherry O'Terry.
Really?
I think so.
It was less of a caricature.
Sherry O'Terry, I think, is an underrated SNL cast member. Just the way her kind of eyes would go off into the mid-space and she'd have that like quirky look on her face.
Yes.
I eat up that kind of humor. This, I thought, was worth describing. Barbara Walters' speech impediment is described as a lateral lisp. Have you ever heard that term before? Lateral lisp?
I can share something with you, Michael.
Go ahead.
I could not pronounce my R's as a child.
No.
Yeah.
Really?
Yes.
You went to a speech therapist?
I did. I had to go once a week, at least once a week. I had to go into like a special closet within the elementary school.
No shit.
To work with a speech pathologist to get my R's down.
Is it going to come back? Just you talking about it now?
I hope not. I don't know. I guess our listeners will tell us if they're detecting it.
Wow, Ahmed. Goddamn.
Yeah, I don't think I got the label that she got, but this was definitely 3 or 4 years of speech therapy to get my R's down.
Holy cow. When did it get corrected?
I think by 4th or 5th grade, it was running on its own.
Well, I'm glad you got your R's.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, if I have to choose, I'm going Sherry O'Terry, even though I love Gilda Radner. Oh, one quick thing on Gilda Radner. Did you read about this? When she died, Gilda Radner, Barbara Walters sent a note to Gene Wilder.
Yeah.
Who, check out that episode.
Pure Imagination.
Yes, Pure Imagination. And signed it Bob Wawa.
Yeah, even though she hated it.
Yeah, even though she hated it. And she also went to speech therapy.
Oh, no doubt.
But
I know I didn't see her there, but
you didn't overlap. But yeah, so that was my little Lebowski Urban Achiever.
Yeah, no doubt. Like that's probably what I knew her for most.
I think so.
Was that impression?
Yeah, this is one of those cases where the impression was almost more famous
and lasted so long beyond even Gilda Radner's stint on SNL.
She did an interview with Bette Davis, the Hollywood actress, who told Barbara Walters, it is good that you're being caricatured. This means you're going to have legacy. This means you're going to be remembered. Take this as a positive.
Totally.
So, it sounds like it did hurt her feelings. Why wouldn't it? But ultimately, I do think we're going to remember her a little bit more because she was ridiculed so often.
No doubt.
Yeah.
Okay, so my achievers, Barbara's name is dropped a lot in songs, movies, TV shows. So I just pulled out a couple of my favorites.
Okay.
One was in Half Baked.
The Dave Chappelle movie?
The Dave Chappelle. It was very early, like Dave Chappelle breakthrough. Even Jon Stewart was in it. Neil Brennan co-produced it. Like pretty much anybody that's in that movie.
In it.
Yeah. So there's a scene that Dave Chappelle's character Thurgood is going to sell pot to like this local kingpin named Sir Smoke-A-Lot. And then next, and I'll wrap this up where the parallel is. Brad Paisley, country singer, had a song in 2003 called Celebrity.
I get to cry to Barbara Walters when things don't go my way.
So both of these are about Barbara Walters as a vehicle for kind of emotional outpouring.
Yeah.
And this was so penetrated into our own psyche of like Barbara Walters' ability to produce tears or produce the inner truth out of people that it's mocked, but in a quite a loving way here in both of these pop culture references. And if one thing is to be remembered for your sort of like lisp and seriousness, I think this is a great contrast to that of like how awesome that you are parodied, mocked, or just referenced for being somebody that people open up to emotionally.
That's a good way of looking at it.
This season, Instacart has your back to school. As in, they've got your back to school lunch favorites, like snack packs and fresh fruit. And they've got your back to school supplies, like backpacks, binders, and pencils. And they've got your back when your kid casually tells you they have a huge school project due tomorrow. Let's face it, we were all that kid. So first call your parents to say I'm sorry, and then download the Instacart app to get delivery in as fast as 30 minutes all school year long. Get a $0 delivery fee for your first 3 orders while supplies last. Minimum $10 per order. Additional terms apply.
Calling all shoppers, Rakuten is the smartest way to save money when you shop because you earn cash back at over 3,500 stores. Fashion, beauty, electronics, home essentials, travel, dining, concert tickets, and more. Your favorite stores like Ulta, Urban Outfitters, and Neiman Marcus pay Rakuten to send them shoppers. And Rakuten then passes on part of that payment to its members as cashback. Cashback is deposited directly into your PayPal account. Or Rakuten can send you a check. You can even maximize your savings by stacking cashback on top of other deals, like store sales and coupons. You're already shopping at your favorite stores. Why not save while you're doing it? It's a no-brainer. Membership is free and it's easy to sign up. Get the Rakuten app now and join the 17 million members who are already saving. Cashback rates change daily. See Rakuten.com for details. That's RAKUTEN. Your cashback really adds up.
Okay, next category?
Yes.
All right. One love. In this category, we each choose a word or phrase that characterizes their loving relationships. Before we select our word or phrase, we are going to review the family life data. Okay, so one correction here. Even Wikipedia says Walters was married 4 times to 3 different men. This is a mistake, apparently, that got reprinted all over the place. I kept seeing it. Her biographer, Susan Page, who wrote this book, was like, I really tried to chase this down. This is not true. Anyway, there are 3 marriages, but they did all end poorly.
But you're saying there was 3 marriages to 3...
3 marriages to 3 different men.
It is a little funny, though, that this coming right off the Rodney Dangerfield episode, who actually did marry the same woman twice.
Yes. Okay. Marriage 1, Robert Henry Katz, 1955 to 1957. Barbara was about 24, divorced at 26. She really tried to pretend like this one didn't happen. There's even a funny story, like late in her 70s or something, she's walking into a party and she says, oh, hello to somebody, and she turns to the person, that was my first husband. And they just had this nice smile, and that was it. There's no contact. This is just a mistake.
Okay.
Marriage number 2.
Feeling for Henry Katz a little bit right now.
I am too. I think he goes on to actually have a loving marriage and a good life, as I recall. Marriage 2, Lee Gruber, 1963 to 1976. Barbara was 34 when they got married, divorced at 47. You mentioned this earlier, 3 miscarriages. This is where they adopted Jackie. And then finally, the 3rd marriage, Merv Adelson. This is the one where people say she married him in 81, and that didn't happen. Merv was still married to somebody else in 81. They got married in 1986, divorced in 1992. Barbara was 57, divorced at 63. So it is remarked upon by just about everybody that she struggled in her personal life.
Yes.
And she's sort of the first to say that.
You were married more than once. Why didn't the marriages work?
I don't think that I was very good at marriage. It may be that my career was just too important. It may have been that I was a difficult person to be married to, and I just seem to be better alone. I'm not lonely. I'm alone.
Do you want to start with your one word or phrase?
Yes.
Okay.
So my phrase is, I did it my way.
Oh.
So Barbara, first of all, was a big proponent of this statement of you can't have it all. You know, she tried. She wanted to have it all, obviously, and she adopted a child because she wanted that love and that joy. She knew that those were meaningful things in life.
Yeah.
And she certainly tried her hand at marriage 3 times. Eventually, she just said, okay, I'm not trying anymore. This isn't for me. You know, what really gives me drive, love, and joy is the impact I have through my work and in the world. I love my daughter very much. That was a very tough teenage years, from what I understand, with her daughter. She was not there and available. Strangely, just like her own father was not there for her during that same time period. But ultimately, Barbara said, I'm just better off alone. I have fun with myself alone. I like myself. And that's ultimately where she landed. And I'm not saying she's at peace with it.
Okay.
I'm just saying she tried her hand. She tried to do the things that she knew brought her maximum love and joy.
Yeah.
And she let the other ones sort of aside. I'm not saying she made 100% peace with it, but she at least did it her way. And she thought life was still pretty damn good to her overall.
Okay, I like that you went positive here. And I like that you're telling an affirmative story about her and her decisions, because I do think it is fairly conscious. I did not go positive here. What I wrote down, I'm not sure is the right phrase. It made a lot of sense in my head when I wrote it down, but I'm going to try and draw it out. I wrote down 3rd person singular.
Interesting.
I think where I'm going with this.
Like L-A-A?
Okay, so I do think that there is a case to be made that her family of origin explains a lot of her psychology. And this is certainly the argument in the Susan Page book, that she had a father who acclimated her to show business and to celebrity, but was also an insane risk taker and led their family into a state of permanent insecurity where they would live in lavish apartments and then they'd be on the streets, up and down through much of her childhood.
New York to Miami to California to whatever.
Yeah. I think that her special needs sister was both the love and a real burden. And there's stories about her interviewing other people who had special needs siblings, and there is a lot of psychology about what that comes with. And I think that, a neurotic mother.
What that comes with to a sibling of somebody with special needs.
The effect that, and the outsized attention. There's a story about Barbara Walters faking a stomachache as a kid that went so far that the doctors could not diagnose it, that they ended up removing her appendix.
Yeah.
Right? And she faked this so that she would get attention. That tells you something about how much attention she was not getting, for understandable reasons.
Yeah, it's a difficult situation back then, especially.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, so there's that. Where I went with this third-person singular idea is that she also, in her interactions with her daughter, at times refers to herself in the third person. This is always a weird thing to me when anybody refers to themselves as Barbara Walters. And the reason this is a problematic thing in my mind is because she's on TV so much. She's got a TV persona. I think when you're on TV the way she is, the ability to distinguish between the real me, the me at home, and the me at work gets really, really hard. And I ended up going down. Here's a question for you.
Okay.
Do you think workaholism is in the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistic Manual, the psychiatry manual?
I don't believe it's exactly there, but I think it's couched in other stuff.
Yes. It's not.
Yeah, okay.
I looked it up, and I really went down a bit of a rabbit hole.
I mean, it may be eventually just the same way that internet addiction probably will be soon if it's not there.
I don't know. I think it is hard in the world we live in, where we prioritize work and where people enjoy a lot of their work, to actually cleanly diagnose workaholism. But my point is, when I looked at her life, so here's a fact that I think is important. She was traveling when her father died, when her mother died, and when her sister died. She wasn't able to make the deathbed for any of them. And it seems kind of coincidental. It's not all at the same time. These are spread out. But that tells you something about where her priorities were, right? And I don't mean to say that as too much of a criticism, because she is pioneering. She is groundbreaking. She does have the psychology that I got to provide. Even if she makes it to north of $100 million, she's still talking about that into her 80s of like, oh, I should have made some different financial decisions. What are you talking about? And I think that there is a tremendous amount of validation that just comes from being on TV and being important.
Yep.
Third person singular, I think where I was going with that is that there's something I see removed from herself in her interpersonal relationships. There's Barbara Walters, the actual human person, real person, and there's Barbara Walters, the TV personality.
Yeah.
And I think her ability to parse those out, it just gets lost. So that's what I went with.
I think we're both right.
That's usually the case.
Yeah, but it's two completely perspectives on a story.
Yeah. She is explicit about the sacrifice. And her main rival is Diane Sawyer, who's married to Mike Nichols and seems to have this wonderful marriage. And she, at times, seems to express real, envy around that.
Yeah, she expressed envy a lot. And that's more of a man in the mirror question, which we'll get to.
Yeah.
Have you ever covered a carpet stain with a rug? Ignored a leaky faucet? Pretended your half-painted living room is supposed to look like that? Well, you're not alone. We've all got unfinished home projects. But there's an easier way. When you download Thumbtack, it's easier to care for your home from top to bottom. Pull out your phone and in just a few steps, you can search, chat, and book highly rated pros right in your neighborhood. Plus, you'll know what to tackle next, because Thumbtack is the app that shows you what to do, who to hire, and when. So say goodbye to all those unfinished home projects and say hello to caring for your home the easier way. Download Thumbtack and start a project today.
Okay, want to know where to find brands on brands this fall? At Ross. They've got big savings on the latest fall styles. Seriously, you'll find the brands you want at prices you'll love. At Ross. Yes, for less.
Category 6, words to live by. In this category, we choose a quote. These are either words that came out of this person's mouth or was said about this person that resonated for us in a certain way. I got a nice simple one.
Okay.
Deep breaths are very helpful at shallow parties.
True.
I like these words a lot. I wind up going to a lot of shallow parties.
I would have attributed that to like the Dalai Lama.
I know, who she interviewed.
Yeah.
Deep breaths are very helpful at shallow parties. I need to be reminded when I'm feeling insecure in a social situation where there's a room full of strangers that are talking about things that I'm not interested in. The deep breaths are helpful.
Yeah.
All right. So what was yours?
Okay. Mine is a quote that she wrote. I believe this was from her book. I'm going to read the whole mini paragraph, but it's only one sentence that I care about.
Okay.
To excel is to reach your own highest dream, but you must also help others where and when you can to reach theirs. Personal gain is empty if you do not feel you have positively touched another's life.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I think this is sort of
this
the
gets
counter...
to my interview prep thing and the killer question thing.
Well, I think it also gets at your third-person singular thing.
Yeah.
Is that she was not only conflicted of her own commitment to her own success, but like, what is the significance of it if you're only inflating yourself?
Right.
This has come up a lot in some of our episodes. I'm remembering it coming up in Gary Shandling.
Yeah.
Is that it's just like, success is no good alone. You got to use it to bring up others, and that's the only way it feels good. And that just seems to be the most obvious but most misunderstood thing for anybody achieving any kind of rising success, big or small, is that it's only worthwhile if you're bringing others up with you.
I mean, I do think this feels like a decent place to talk briefly about The View. I do not pretend to be an expert on The View, but there's a way in which The View is Barbara Walters' baby. Like, her character strengths and weaknesses are kind of manifest in all of the hosts throughout the years.
Yeah.
I mean, I think her inner conflict is the DNA of that show. What was the quote again? How does it go?
Personal gain is empty if you do not feel you have positively touched another's life.
Because if you are as influential and as powerful as she is, and you are shaping public opinion about the newsmakers, whether they're heads of state or whether they're in the entertainment section, that is one way of convincing yourself, I'm doing good in the world. I am helping get at the truth of people and putting it on display for millions to see. But really a bigger legacy is I'm empowering others beneath me, which she does, imperfectly, but in a way that's engaging with The View.
Yes.
And when she retires from The View, I mean, there's an incredible, did you see this image? Like, all these women broadcasters come, Oprah and Diane Sawyer, I mean, it's everybody. It's a really, really powerful picture, all there to like say thank you for what you've done.
Yeah, and Barbara welled up at that moment and said, like, she kind of just spontaneously said, this is my legacy.
And
it was really interesting. And even The View itself, I mean, there's been 29 hosts.
It should have been in the first line, man. It should have been in the first line. All right, let's move on. Category 7, Man in the Mirror. This category is fairly simple. Did this person like their reflection, yes or no? This is not about beauty so much, but rather a question of self-confidence versus self-judgment. So, first off, she gave us an answer, and I'll play the clip.
On a scale of 1 to 10, where would you put you?
If I tell you, will you tell me?
Yes.
A 9.
Do I have to tell you?
You said you were.
I would say I am probably a 5 to 6.
She rates herself on a scale of 10. She says 5, 6, 6.
Yeah.
Which, she's an attractive woman. She is probably, by most standards, higher than a 6.
Yeah.
I don't know why she's putting herself as a 6. That says I am less attractive than I think I am.
I think it's because she's surrounded by beautiful people and famous people all the time.
Makes sense. Yeah, this is my problem.
Yeah. Is it?
No.
Okay.
No. Anyway, so I think she likes it, but there's insecurity there. There's self-judgment there, just about her straight-up physical appearance. That said, she takes care of herself and looks great on TV for 50 decades. What more do you want?
Yeah. So, that's the physical side. And I think you're right. I think it is underestimated. I think she actually was quite beautiful.
Yeah.
Even like,
there was
well
even
into
a
her
thing
old
where
age.
she worked as a playmate. Did you see this?
Yeah, it was like that was part of her Today Show.
Yeah, stint. Yeah. Which, by the way, Today's Show, you know who preceded her?
Florence Henderson.
Yes.
Yeah.
Florence Henderson.
Well, basically, our whole catalog's coming up in the Barbara Walters episode.
And she was like proud that she was able to pass as a Playboy bunny and do a kind of, I don't think it was an expose, but it was a story on the mansion and Hefner. So
you said she gave an answer, but so you're saying yes.
I think so, but it's not a heavy yes. It's a slight yes.
Yeah. And I'm going a pretty soft no.
Oh.
I think we saw a lot of evidence, what we talked about in the family life, but just a feeling of inadequacy. Although I did say, I was one that said, like, she did it her way, there was just a lot of self-doubting in the process.
Yeah, but isn't that more in your head? Isn't this category really about appearances?
No, it's self-perception.
Okay.
But I think even if you just make it about appearances, she's always leveling up. And like her own memoir, she called Audition. And a review for this said that she called her memoir Audition because she felt that her life was one competition after another. No matter how high my profile became, this is a quote from the book, how many awards I received or how much money I made, my fear was that it could all be taken away from me.
Yeah. That is ultimately irrational at some point, right? I mean, she is, and she's doing some shit behind behind the scenes to like get scoops and get exclusives and cutting people out. I mean, there's some real backstabbing in her career.
Yeah, and she said in an Oprah interview, there are whole areas in my life in which I feel very inadequate. This is about her daughter's criticisms. My mommy doesn't drive. My mommy burns the meatloaf. My mommy doesn't do anything except television. Like, there's all these signs of inadequacy.
It's not funny, but like, I don't know, to hear it put out that way. But it's like, yeah, but that's a big deal.
But inadequacy was a big thing for her. And I think this theme of never enough.
Yes.
And be that in appearances, I think a 6 is great.
Yeah. No,
like, even if you're calling yourself a 6, but I think she's the type of person that calls herself a 6 and she says that she's missing 4, not that she's like a +6.
Yeah. I mean, I think she had to be dragged away from television in her 80s, right? And I think it was because of cognitive decline, and she left reluctantly. And even when she retired, there was still another appearance there. I mean, I think that television was validating for her, full stop. No, you're right. I mean, a soft no is an appropriate answer. I think I'm looking at it superficially here, which is why I'm going soft yes.
But I think part of the soft no is really just her own self-judgment. So you take the exact same perception that she had of herself, both physically and overall presence-wise, and other people would have been more satisfied with it.
Yes.
She ranks herself lower, and I think part of that could be a consequence of the profession as well. Being around higher profile people, interviewing them all the time, I think that is self-image danger zone.
I'll take it another step further. Like, I did not watch many Barbara Walters interviews, in part because I really hate the lighting of a lot of these.
What?
Let me draw this out, Ahmed. I think I have a point to make. There is something soft.
You went very Sherry O'Terry bug eyes.
There is something soft and fake about how these interviews are staged and set that feels so artificial to me and always has. I liked reading about her. I did not like watching because the aesthetics of television in the 80s and 90s smack of superficiality to me. And I wonder if she's watching that tape, she's seeing how she's lit, how she's presented, how she's leaning into the camera, how she's capturing the tears of a celebrity. And there's something about it that rings so fucking fake to me. And it just does. It always has. And I think if you are her and are watching yourself on television and watching these interviews, which she undoubtedly had to do, your self-perception gets warped.
I so disagree with you on the lighting. I loved him. I think it's great. And I think it's too bad that you spent
your heartwarming, but it doesn't look fake to you?
I don't care.
Oh, but that's important. If what's being presented here is truth, is news, is information, this gets at the criticism to me. It's not that her interview style or her stories or her choice of stories were a bad idea. It's the presentation of that through this medium. Which is not her fault.
No, this is going back to the blurring the lines of news and entertainment.
Yes.
But no, sometimes you have to add the elements to create the drama. You're not going to fault a movie director for staging lighting and doing things in a certain way in order to invoke tears in the audience. I think this is just, I do not think that it is jeopardizing.
If you accentuate them, aren't you sort of amplifying what may or may not be real? It just doesn't feel like TV news has never felt real to me.
It's impossible to be it. The actual medium is impossible. Even here in this quote,
exactly my point. That is exactly my point. This is not a criticism of Barbara Walters. This is a criticism of TV. But I think that if your whole life is built on that industry and in this job, then your self-perception gets warped by it.
So my criticism of you, sir, is this: it's like this unrelenting pursuit of pure authenticity. It's not possible. There is not pure authenticity possible. Everything has a bit of manufacturing and preparation and lighting and adjustment and editing.
Okay.
Unless we are living in real life and you and I are doing as we did last night and we go out to dinner and watch a basketball game and chat and drink. That's the only thing authentic out there. The second media enters it, you are adding an element of inauthenticity.
We do not disagree here, but I just don't think that that's understood. I think that that's why there is something of a media literacy crisis out there.
Yes.
Right.
No, there's no doubt.
That is my real point, is that this is shaped and presented to us as truth, as the way it is.
Huge problem, especially people that are younger or less educated and don't quite understand the level of manipulation that may or may not.
And if you are caught up in that system, that messes with your head. It's got to. Yeah. I can't believe I'm still going yes and Man in the Mirror, but I am.
Yes.
Okay.
By the way, we do work in media.
Yeah, well, kind of, but audio's
What do you mean, kind of?
Okay, you're right.
Yeah.
No, okay, look, yes, that's true. And there's a meta point being made. But, well, I'm going to take 10 seconds to defend audio. I think audio is more rooted in truth. I think there's something about the human voice that has a little more truth to it. I think deception is much easier when you add a visual. That's my personal point of view.
I will let your personal point of view stand.
Thanks. Agree to disagree. Actually, I think we're agreeing.
I think we agree to agree.
I think we agree to agree. All right, next category. Coffee, cocktail, or cannabis. This is where we ask, which one would we most want to do with our dead celebrity? This may be a question of what drug sounds like the most fun to partake with this person, or another philosophy is that a particular kind of drug might allow access to a part of them that we are most curious about. I've got a simple answer here.
Okay.
I want to drink Manhattans in Manhattan. I want to go to like a cocktail party with Barbara Walters, and I want to
hell of a guest list, I'm sure.
Yeah, and I want to shadow her because all the stuff I just said about my criticisms of the staged interview, I think I would get really into watching her process and the prep. I would love to see her navigate a cocktail party. Who's interesting? How does she talk to them? I think the world she travels in of New York socialites, half of the Famous and Gravy back catalog is going to be present, whether it's Tom Wolfe or Nora Ephron or Philip Seymour Hoffman, or whoever it may be. One way or another, I would love to just follow her around and drinking cocktails. That's my coffee cocktail.
Yeah. So poor Barbara's got a lot of drinking to do because I'm going to do the same. So she said once that her idea of heaven is a trashy novel and a glass of wine.
That's my idea of heaven too. Yeah.
But I'm going to be the trashy novel here that she gets to bring along.
Never thought of you that way, sir.
That would be a good. That's not a bad nickname for me.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a complete
my trashy novel co-host.
Does it fit at all?
I don't know. We'll try it on your bio on LinkedIn. See if it takes.
I don't think it fits. I can't even make up a backstory to where it fits.
I can. You've told me enough stories. Anyway.
Oh my. Okay.
All right. Go on. Go on.
So I just think she's got so much information from all of the world stories that she's experienced firsthand that I think there's so much wisdom that's got to be baked in there. Because somebody that goes and interviews all sitting presidents from what was the first one? Was it Johnson or Nixon? All the way through Obama. Somebody who has done that, but has also interviewed Fidel Castro, the Shah of Iran, Michael Jackson, all these worldviews, but you have to glean something positive from each of them. And you do not spend a couple of days with Fidel Castro and see that there is some virtue somewhere in his life that she sees, because there is some joy and some drive, and probably same with Gaddafi and same with some of the tortured souls out there, like the Menendez brothers and so forth. She sees all the bad, but she also sees, I don't want to say the good, but she sees something very unique about the laws of human nature. And I just think that would make her interesting AF to have a few bottles of Chardonnay with and just rap about how life goes.
Yeah, this is interesting. I mean, there's a question that I have about the world where I believe evil exists. It's not hard to make that case.
Yeah.
Humans hurt each other. One thing I wrestle with is human nature corrupt, or is human nature downstream of evil systems? And I want to believe that systems can lead people to evil directions, so we should fix systems, not necessarily human nature. But that's an optimistic worldview. I wonder if she shares that, and she'd be a good person to ask.
Yes.
Yeah.
But do you believe, we could do a whole nother show on this, but let me just ask this simple question.
Yeah.
Is anybody born evil?
That's the question.
That's your question for her, but what is your answer?
Yeah. I want to fight for the worldview that says no.
Yeah.
I think people are born sick. I'm not sure they're born evil.
I can agree with that. I want to believe that.
Yeah.
I want to believe that. And
that's the conversation, and she'd be an interesting person to bat around that with, because she's smart as hell. So you went cocktail.
I went wine specifically, but yes, I think I went Chardonnay on top of that. And I don't even know if that's what Barbara wanted.
That's probably about right.
Yeah. I feel like it's more of a session.
This is
Yeah.
This is a tasting.
Yes.
It could be. Excellent. All right. Final category, the Vanderbeek, named after James Vanderbeek, who famously said in Varsity Blues,
I don't want your life.
Amit, we're going to work together on this to respond to James and say, here's the case for why you would want this life.
Yeah, and I think we can say quickly, there's some very obvious reasons why James may be correct, why he might not want it. There's this fraught personal life, there's the inner conflict, there is the life as a celebrity.
I think there's the experience of being ridiculed on Saturday Night Live. I think that there's the pain that comes with having to bust ceilings so that you can make it in a man's world, as it were. I mean, I think that there's a lot.
Yeah, the feelings of inadequacy despite all of that.
Hell yeah.
Right, it's a tough one.
Okay.
But that's not the job we're doing here, right? The job we're doing here is why you would want this life. And I have a feeling I'm going to take yours, but do you remember what we said in the Vidal Sassoon episode, or what you said?
About cutting hair?
You said something to the effect of, I think it looks fun as hell to just cut people's hair all the time and get to interact with that many people.
While they're watching themselves in the mirror. That was the key part of it for me, is that the scene of being in a barbershop or being in a salon, like the way people are studying themselves and you're cutting their hair almost as a distraction. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's getting to know that many people in such an intimate way.
Yeah.
And in such diverse settings also. So it's both like this deep interpersonal connection that you form with a lot of people, even if it's momentary, that still runs deep, long, and wide, and these incredible settings and journeys she went on.
Yeah, I think you can unpack that in a few different parts. I think the variety that she gets to see. You know, one thing that's very, I don't know, close to our heart on this show is that on Famous and Gravy, we talk about pop stars as well as politicians, athletes, authors, and so forth.
It's possible we couldn't be here without Barbara.
I think there's some truth to that. I think that, you know, you and I talk about this idea of celebrities as symbols, but how do you humanize them? And how do you do that on behalf of an audience? I think you get to see exaggerated versions of human characteristics on display in celebrities.
Yes.
And she got to do that for 50 plus years, 60 plus years. That was her life.
But it's not only moving, but wouldn't you also just say it's fun?
Yeah, that looks like a blast. I'd love to do that. It's 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, screw the value, screw the ratings, screw the, like, am I meeting the standards of journalism or am I just having a good time? This is a good time. These are good conversations and you get to drill into people. In fact, it's asked of you to be a student of the human condition. I mean, in so many ways. What is it about you? What do you represent to this society and culture?
Yeah.
You know, what does your story have to say about who we are? I mean, that is fun.
So I think that was basically a two-part answer in one thing, and it was the closeness that you get to people, and secondly, it's just pure raw fun.
Yeah, I think, look, all of the cost at the interpersonal life, my theory on her is that she couldn't distinguish between being addicted to work and television versus being addicted to the interview experience. This woman needs a podcast.
Nobody else needs a podcast.
Right. I mean, or something like that. I think it was a rush and it was exciting and there was a competitive element to it. But I also think that there is in all of that, even if the industry in my mind is somewhat corrupted or at least complicated, there is a virtuousness in there, right? There is even a liberation and a catharsis in turning the spotlight so bright on somebody else. That alone, James, is why you should want this life.
Yeah, I'm going to bring on a second point. You know, we're trying to get away from the headlines and the first line of the obituary stuff.
Right.
So what we saw in the first line is that she was the first co-host, she was the first evening anchor, but what she actually did is she changed the broken system for the better. And I think that's slightly different than just being the first to do that in breaking through glass ceilings, so to speak, because anybody that can do that on any element as small or as big as they need to be, that is significance.
Yeah.
Changing any system that is broken and changing it.
It's changing power.
Totally. And that can happen at the most microscopic of levels, right? That can happen in elementary school. That can happen in your workplace. It can happen wherever. But anybody that gets to do that in the course of their life has done something very worthwhile. And she happened to do it on this scale that we're still talking about because we're still not past gender inequality. And so we're still talking about it in a headlining way. But if I just want to, let's just forget the whole story and just say you changed the broken system for the better, I think that's pretty great.
I agree.
I have one more.
Okay.
She proved it herself. You know, she said on her tombstone, this is the second consecutive person that we've had that actually had a quote on their tombstone. And she said, "No regrets. I had a great life." And I don't think you're going to lie on your tombstone. Right. And it's just, I'm saying I
might lie on my tombstone.
You are? I had hair and perfect hearing.
You. Yeah. No, I think I like that. Point number 3 is the tombstone.
Yeah, it's the evidence. There's the ups and downs and there's all these little things to say. But I think if you're going to leave behind your body and put above it, I had a good life.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's wrap it all up, right? So we said it looked like fun. And along with the same fun, there was a closeness to people.
Yes.
Secondly, she changed the broken system for the better, which can happen on a very small scale. And lastly, she said it herself, I had a great life. All right.
No, you take it.
Okay. So I am Barbara Walters, and you want my life.
Okay. speed round time. What are some past episodes that, if you enjoyed this episode of Famous and Gravy, you might go listen to? I got one in mind. I'm going Mary Tyler Moore. I mean, what's funny about all the people who came out to praise Barbara Walters when she died, like Katie Couric and Oprah, they are also the same people who are like, I loved the Mary Tyler Moore show, and that paved the way. The Mary Tyler Moore show preceded Barbara Walters. Yeah, I think it's really important and not totally coincidental. Yeah. So I'd encourage people to check out that episode.
Okay. Yeah.
So who you got?
I got weird feelings of John Madden. The title of John Madden episode was Game Changer. Yeah. Right? They really changed the way things were done, and even him as a broadcaster from a journalistic point of view. That is exactly what Barbara Walters did in a completely different segment of journalism.
Awesome. I love it. Mary Tyler Moore and John Madden. We'll link to them in the show notes. Here is a preview for the next episode of Famous and Gravy. In the 1970s, he moved to New York to study dance, becoming a member of Elliott Feld Ballet.
Oh my God. Oh, Walken.
Luckily, as of this recording, Christopher Walken's still with us.
Famous and Gravy listeners, we love hearing from you. If you want to reach out with a comment, question, or to participate in our opening quiz, email us at hello@famousandgravy.com. In our show notes, we include all kinds of links, including to our website and social channels. Famous and Gravy is created and co-hosted by Michael Osborne and me, Amit Kapoor. This episode was produced by Megan Palmer, with original music by Kevin Strang. Thanks, and see you next time.
Follow Famous and Gravy on the Wondery app. You can listen to more episodes early and ad-free right now by joining Wondery Plus in the Wondery app, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify. Before you go, tell us about yourself by completing a short survey at Wondery.com/survey.